So, David, I'm really pleased to be here with you again, and I understand that we're going to be looking at morals and ethics. So, I better check in and make sure I have some morals. I think it would be good if we ran over that, because I don't actually recall being taught any morals and ethics. So, perhaps it's a good time to start.
Oh, it's never too late, and thank you so much, Louise, for having me back. I want to say that it's been a great honor to be a part of the Full Circle Project and what you are doing there, and I think it's fantastic. And it's a pleasure to do this for me because just being able to, I've been in deep research on these subjects for a while now, and I'm currently working on my book and trying to consolidate all these thoughts and put it on paper for people, and so this has been a really helpful process in doing that, and I really appreciate everybody's kind comments, and I look forward to some awesome questions so that we can really tease out all the details with all of this. So, but yeah, when it comes to morals and ethics, this is something that while I was growing up, I was taught about through the vehicle of religion. I was raised as pretty much like a fundamentalist Christian. And it didn't always jive with me growing up, but I did appreciate the concept of, do no harm to others, and the idea that we must interact with each other on a moral basis. It's sort of like a universal love concept or whatever. But I also realized that it kind of needed to be evolved because when I started looking around at the type of personalities in the churches that we'd be at, I didn't see a lot of morals and ethics really exercised or practiced in real life. I heard a lot of people talking about it. I heard a lot of people quoting scripture. I heard a lot of people getting up in sort of a high and mighty, I'm holier than thou type of attitude, but I never really saw it practically applied in people's lives. And even as a young kid, I was able to see right through that. And I think actually children are a lot more perceptive to that. They kind of call our bluff. They call the bluff of the adult world, I would say. And so I was growing up in that environment and thinking, well, I don't want to be around these people because they're not really practicing what they preach. And so I started doing a lot of reading in martial art literature. I was attracted to it, and I was interested in learning the moves because when I was a kid, I would just be watching something like the Ninja Turtles or whatever, and I was like, oh, that looks really cool. And I felt like I was a small kid. I was picked on a lot, and I needed to feel powerful. And martial arts, right on the surface of it, the training, I saw these really, not so big individuals doing incredible movements that were deflecting these big, strong attackers, and they looked very empowered. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. That's what I need so that I can stop being picked on and stop being bullied. And I got to start growing a spine. And these guys really seem to represent that. But what I started to find out as I was doing more reading was that there was so much relating to the philosophy of warriorship where it was about being virtuous, was about cultivating a moral compass and why that's important. And it really struck home with me right from day one when I started reading that. And now I've continued it. I've also looked into, every philosophy I could get my hands on. I've done a lot of research in comparative religion and mythology. And I've also just had a lot of experience in my own life of, trying to work with these different principles. So the idea of morality, I first came across it in a martial art context by studying the 7 virtues of the samurai. And in the samurai tradition, they have 7 virtues, and they honestly, when you read the history of the samurai and you start getting into some of the different things that happened in medieval Japan, you might not always associate virtue with the samurai class because, the samurai class, when it was maybe in its original intention, had this really deep philosophical understanding of these virtues. But then as time went on, as we explained before, this warrior class was ultimately turned into and used as a vehicle for the ruling class, as sort of like the iron fist of the ruling class. So they became more like mercenaries. They became soldiers for hire. And it just kind of lost its deep philosophical meaning over time. But it was always there in the background, and when you read different writings, if you read the works of like Miyoto Musashi, the Book of Five Rings, or you read the Hakaguri, and you read, you get into some of this literature coming out of Japan, you do see that this keeps coming up, these virtues, and I found them to be Very self-explanatory. So I'm just going to read them out for people. The 7 virtues I'm talking about are integrity, respect, heroic courage, honor, compassion, honesty and sincerity, and duty and loyalty. And I found it interesting that it was 7. They picked 7 virtues. That number 7 has often been considered a holy number. And there's also, if you get into the more Eastern traditions, you'll see that they have the understanding of the chakra system of the human body. Chakra just means energy wheel in the body. And of course, there are 7. And then when you go, I've done a lot of work with the native Aboriginals here in Canada, and they also have 7 sacred teachings. And their 7 is love, honesty, respect, truth, courage, wisdom, and humility, which is also very similar to the samurai tradition. And then when you go back even into ancient Egypt, or if you go to Kemet, which is the original name of Egypt, Kem, they have this understanding of the Hermetic laws, the Hermetic laws of ancient Kemet. And this is also 7. And they're not just talking about morality in this, they're talking about the nature of reality itself, mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, gender, rhythm, cause and effect. And cause and effect is a very interesting one when it comes to martial arts and what we're talking about here with the warrior philosophy, because if you think of morality in a very simple way, we are talking about cause and effect. And I think a lot of people don't understand why there's a lot of oppositional force coming their way in their lives. And if you have a deep understanding of why moral virtue is actually a necessity for life, it's actually something that's there not just to be there to placate everybody else around you and satisfy everybody else around you, and it becomes this thing about it's almost like a show and tell contest where everybody's like, I'm more moral than you are, I'm a better person than you are. This is kind of where it's degraded into, and I think I'd have to blame the institutionalized religion for that in the way that it's been taught. But the true understanding of it is that it is something that serves both you and those around you. Morality serves as a limit. And you often get into different philosophers like Schelling or Hegel or Heidegger, Martin Heidegger, and you get into their discussions about what morality is and why it's important. And they're talking about it as a limit that is there to get rid of limitation. And all that might sound like an oxymoron or whatever, but it's actually, if you understand that, the limit on the actions that you take in the world is there specifically so that you can take better action in the world and then enhance your life and the life of those around you, as opposed to just taking any action whatsoever, regardless of how it might impact those around you. If you live that way, if you live in that way where some people say, well, you want to be completely free, I don't want anybody to restrict me in any way, shape, or form. Well, no, we don't want any form of big government restricting us because that's not their job. But as human beings that are a part of this world, that are a part of our society, that are a part of our community, that are a part of our family units, and that are individuals in our own right, we should have, and we do have, a foundational understanding of right and wrong. We really do. And I've tested this with children. I've tested this with adults, just in discussions and training methods that I use in my practice. And I believe we have a foundational understanding of it, although I'd say as people get older, it gets polluted, it gets tainted, it gets guided in a particular direction, and there becomes this whole discussion about moral relativity. Like, I only have to be moral in the way I want to be moral that serves me only. And it doesn't have to serve everybody else around me. It doesn't have to be in balance with natural law. It doesn't have to be in balance with nature and everything else around me. It just, as long as it serves me, then it's okay. And that's not true. Moral virtue is something that is a limit there that says, I'm not going to harm you and interfere with your life path so long as you don't harm me and interfere with my life path. And the reason we're putting that limit there is that I'm going to limit my action, that I'm not going to steal from you, I'm not going to damage your property, I'm not going to harm you, your person, I'm not going to harm your family. Even the way that I discuss business with you, or discuss a project with you, or discuss philosophy with you, I'm going to do it in a way that is promoting a peaceful, harmonious interaction. But at the same time, I have to be true to myself. I have to be able to be honest. I have to be able to speak freely. But there's a way to speak freely. There's a way to act freely where you're not infringing on the rights or infringing on the psyche of the person that you're interacting with. So that limitation that we all agree on is to promote a more civilized or enlightened approach to life, because we all do share this planet. We all do share this planet with also other living beings that are other life forms we share it with, and we have to come to an understanding of how these concepts, these codes of honor, these codes of chivalry, these codes of conduct are there not as laws in the way that the legal system today is promoting hundreds of thousands of different laws that are really codes that are more to do with commerce, and they're really only to do with superficial things or whatever. And a lot of those laws are in place to protect the tyrannical forces that be in the world, the governments and whatnot. And they're not laws that are there to keep the peace. I remember I mentioned that quote in the last discussion from Morihei Ueshiba, where he was talking about how important it is in this way of the warrior the warrior is there to preserve everything in nature in its right form, to protect the peace of the world, to bring the inner energy of the universe in order. It's to establish harmony. All right, so you're getting a theme here about why the moral virtue is important, because the result of this application of moral virtue in yourself, in your life, and if it was done in your community and worldwide, it would bring about harmony, because it's an understanding of it's basically this. I see myself in you. I see that you are also a living human being. And if I want you to treat me in a certain way, it's a law of the universe that I must treat you in that way as well. I must give you that respect. The only thing that'll change that and create this idea that is false called moral relativism is when I start to believe falsely that I am somehow superior to you, that the laws don't apply to me. So we might say, okay, well, it's like what we see a lot of times that's happened in past with, say, you look at the Inquisition, or you look at something that's gone on in some religious circles where there's this holier than thou idea that says, well, for all of you, the rest of the people, the riffraff, the goyim, whatever, you have to follow these laws, okay, to keep order and harmony. But the elite classes, the higher level classes, the banking classes, the political classes, the military classes, we don't have to follow those laws. The police and military, we don't have to follow those laws, because we've been given a sort of 007 status. We have a license to kill. We have a license to break the natural law. Okay? And that's the only way that poisonous idea will creep in, is when there's a belief system that we are superior to you. Okay? Like if we look at what's going on with the state of Israel versus Palestine, or the rest of the Middle East, for example, or you look at what's going on in America and how they've got how many bases worldwide, and they're infringing on the sovereignty of nations and engaging in illegal conflicts and causing all kinds of chaos. They're not establishing harmony. They might say they're establishing a new world order, a new order in the way they believe it, but it's not based in morality the way we're discussing here. It's based in hierarchy. It's based in an inversion of this understanding, and it's based in what they think psychopathically is order, when in fact it's not order. It is the opposite of order. It's creating more war, more poverty, more of the things that we don't want to see. So when you look at what's happening with these political states, and then you get into the economic system and you see how that's been hijacked and polluted and changed and turned against us in a way under this guise of moral relativism, we look at what happened on Wall Street and all that. Everywhere you look, you're going to see them putting up the big sign that's flashing saying, hey, we're good people. We just did what we thought was right, and we were doing what we thought was right for America, and we were doing what we thought was right for the world. But it wasn't right, because it wasn't founded on a deep understanding of these moral principles, because if it was, we would not be in the situation that we are in. And you can prove this kind of stuff to yourself on an individual level as you're working through this in your own life. If you start practicing these types of virtues, and I'm going to list them again from the samurai tradition, if you start practicing integrity, integrity means you're being acutely honest throughout your dealings with all people. You believe in justice. All right. You understand what justice is. You understand what right and wrong is. All right. You really have to understand honesty and respect. You know, what is respect? Well, respect is, I'm always telling the kids in my class, we bow to each other for respect before the class and before we train. So if we're about to train and engage in working on these techniques, I'm bowing to you not because you're in a position of authority over me or I'm a position of authority over you. It's because we're coming mutually together to agree that we are here to sharpen each other's blade. We are here to work to develop ourselves. We are here to improve ourselves. We are here to demonstrate respect. If I want you to respect me, I have to respect you. It's a law. And if you're going to, it's going to work vice versa. And so that's a key ingredient. So practice respect. Respect the fact that you're a living miracle. I'm a living, walking miracle, and so are you. All right? The fact that we are here alive on this planet at this time, and if you really start getting into the workings of your body and your mind and your spirit and how all that works, and we're going to get into that next, you can't see life as anything but a miracle. So if I'm going to say that my life is a miracle and my life's important and my life is significant and what I do is great or whatever, I have to respect the fact that that's the same for you. And if we come together with that mutual understanding, then you're going to start creating harmony. And you understand too that human beings want that. Most arguments are starting and taking place between people on just a social level because someone feels like they've been disrespected, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're like, hey, you disrespected me, yo. And you're like, well, let's come to a place of balance, you know? Let's come to a compromise. You're becoming a master at the art of compromise. And you're not compromising all of your rights and freedoms and your true self and all that. You're compromising maybe your need to supersede somebody or to infringe on what they're doing in order to better yourself. You know, you shouldn't be stealing. All of this can be broken down as whether you're stealing or whether you're creating yourself from a unique place. And when you're going to be going on that path, the next tenet is heroic courage. This is the key fundamental aspect of the warrior concept, which is to have the courage to live a life of honor, to live a life of integrity, to live a life of compassion. A lot of people hear that word compassion and they think of like these weak-kneed, you know, like you're like you're totally passive to everything that's going on because you're compassionate. You know, even in male culture today, it's like you're made fun of for being compassionate. You're like, nah, you're a man. You don't need to be compassionate. You don't need to access that part of yourself. You just need to take what you want, when you want it, how you want it, you know? But that's the language of a brute. That's the language of an animal, not a human, all right? Compassion is what separates the fact that we have the ability to exercise compassion and empathy is what separates us from the rest of creation. So that's a very key ingredient. You need to have that. If you want people to show compassion to you, you better show compassion in your life, and not because it's some duty, not because it's written in the Bible or in the Quran or in some holy book or whatever. It's because it's written in the laws of the universe. It's written into the very foundation of your heart and the cell structure of your body and everything else. I mean, the way your body interacts with its own self, all the cells, the heart cells, the liver cells, the brain cells, you know, they're all individuated, but they're all working in harmony. If they're not, then all of a sudden you're distorted and you're getting disease in your body. So if we see disease in our society, in the body politic, well, could it be because we're missing some ingredients here? I would say so. To continue forward, honesty and sincerity. You cannot be honest with other people unless you can be honest with yourself. That is a law. You cannot break that. You can pretend that if you lie to yourself every day, because here if I was saying the word pretend, we're already lying to ourselves. If we can pretend that we are being honest with other people around us, and maybe we are in some cases, but if the foundation of the actions that we're taking in the world and the words coming out of our mouth is not founded in a sincere honesty, and again, that's going to take some courage to be honest. Truth requires courage, and truth fosters courage and furthers courage. But if you can't be honest with yourself, you will not be able to be honest with other people around you, which is why everybody's like, well, every time we get some politician and all they do is lie, and then they say they're going to do one thing in the campaign, and then when they get elected, they do the complete opposite. Well, that's because what they said was bullshit from the beginning. From the beginning. Whether even if they did something that they said they were going to do, it doesn't matter. The foundation is, I want the prestige of being the ruler. I want to get into office. I want my party to win. There's money behind me. I want to, it's not founded in, I want to honestly help serve the people that I'm elected to represent.
Exactly.
Okay, it's not founded in that. And if it ever is, those people get taken out of the business real quick. And then the last one is duty and loyalty. Now, I have to clear this up because there are people listening who might be very scholarly on these subjects and may have read a lot of different points of history when it comes to warrior culture, and they will instantly be saying, oh, well, the duty and loyalty is the blind service to the emperor, to the king, to the ruler. And in many cases, that's true, but I believe that to be a warped understanding of this originally beautiful tenet here in one of the 7 virtues of duty and loyalty. The question isn't about duty and loyalty. The question is about, what do you have loyalty to? Where is your duty? Do you recognize what that is? And do you recognize that this concept that with great power comes what? It comes great responsibility. Responsibility to what? Well, that responsibility is already discussing the fact that there is a duty. There's a duty that needs to be upheld. There's a certain law that needs to be upheld. And in warrior culture, the idea is that warriors are responsible for everything that they have done, everything that they are doing now, and everything they're going to do in the future. They understand the consequences. They understand that 7th tenet of the 7 Hermetic laws, which is cause and effect. Everything has a cause, everything has an effect, all right? And so if the action, or say the cause is that you're taking some action against your neighbor for whatever reason, and you decide to kind of, even just a little thing, you start stealing his parking spot or something like that, or it started on a very little level. You're doing something at the expense of somebody else to further your agenda. Your duty now is only to your selfish interest. It's not to this understanding of how to maintain peace and harmony in your community. So the duty is to your true self, the truest parts of yourself, that is based and rooted completely in honesty. And then because you're in that space first, you will then automatically understand that your duty is to serve the goodness, is to serve those around you in the way that you would like them to serve you. It's not supposed to be a service idea in the sense that we see now with the military and the police and all these different servants of the system. It's not meant to be like that. That's a warped system. So those people that are expressing duty and loyalty to that, they're lying to themselves. So that means the whole principle is completely gone already. But if it's founded on the other principles of the 7 virtues, integrity, respect, courage, honor, compassion, honesty, and then you add duty and loyalty at the end of that, now you're playing with something that's real. Now you're doing something that's actually going to bring about a positive effect in the world. So those 7 tenets I take them very seriously. I do my best. I aspire to them. Because I've reaped the benefits of this. If people think a life of moral virtue is somehow an arduous life, it's not. That's not saying it's not a hard challenge to uphold. But what it is that challenge is always what produces a greater effect. We were saying before about how you were even born into this world through struggle. So struggle is what produces life. So if there's a struggle in your life to try to uphold these tenets, don't feel like it's because you're a bad person. The guidelines that are here are there to bring you back to honesty with yourself. If you're honest with yourself, it won't be hard to uphold these moral virtues. It'll be like breathing. It'll be easy. And you might stumble now and then. You might make a mistake. But the question is, are you going to continue to make those mistakes? Or are you going to work on correcting them? In a physical training analogy, for those people that maybe are interested in actually getting involved in the physical training, you're going to find out very quickly that martial arts is a very, very difficult thing to learn. It's very, very challenging to learn. But what are you learning? You're learning the most efficient and easy way of doing something. I'm learning what's the most efficient way to deal with a particular type of energy. Somebody's pushing me very forcefully in this direction. I'm learning how to very easily take that off track, redirect it, and move around it. You're not really learning how to fight and how to kill people and how to hurt people. You're learning the principles of nature. You're learning the principles of morality and virtue through a physical form. Somebody is imposing their will on you in an unlawful and a non-moral way. They're breaching that natural law. Well, you can either sit there and take it, or you can learn how to redirect, how to stop, and how to put that situation to rest, should it ever arise. So you're learning that you're going to have to make mistakes. You're going to have to challenge yourself constantly so that you can learn the easiest way of doing things. Isn't that funny that we're teaching you the easy way, but that it's actually hard to learn the easy way? What does that say about us? What does that say about where we're at right now in our point in our development as a species? It says that we've got a lot of correcting to do. There's sort of an autocorrect, quote unquote, that will eventually start to happen. And what I've always told my students, and this is what was told to me as well, is that eventually you won't even know how to do it the wrong way. You'll naturally be expressing the correct way when you put the time in. So it's the same with these moral principles, is that the more you practice them in your life, the more you and really feel into it, be honest with yourself, start with that, then you're just pay attention, take notes about where your life was at prior to practicing these virtues in your life, and then take note of where it is next year from now, after really, really focusing in and meditating on this and trying to implement this. And there's a lot of great sources I can give you to read about very beautiful understandings and renderings of moral philosophy. And when you start bringing it into your consciousness and you point your consciousness at it and it's going to start bringing it into your life, what's going to happen? We were talking about this before we came on the air, Louise, about this idea of synchronicity and this idea that you can really bring about a sort of a different kind of morphogenetic field in your life, or whatever you want to call it, where you will attract like-minded moral people into your life. You may also attract some challenges to come your way to sharpen your blade a little bit further, to make you a little bit stronger. So don't be afraid of the challenges. Now you're going to see challenge on a totally different level. You're going to see these obstacles on your life in a totally different way. No longer are they some nuisance or something, oh my God, I just got to deal with this thing or this guy or whatever. No, you're going to start to get excited because you're going to know, the secret is to know that all these challenges coming up into your life are there to teach a lesson. They're there to make you stronger. And when you keep track of it and you take notes, write a diary, do a little video log and make it just for yourself. Do whatever you need to do to keep track of these things. Because if we can look back on where we were at a certain point in our development, understand what we were doing the whole time to change that dynamic and to build a stronger composition, and understand where we are now, and then we can project forward into the future, which hasn't happened yet and is a completely empty slate. We can do whatever we want with it. Then we're going to start to see that we are making progress, and you're going to feel better. You're actually going to be healthier, believe it or not. And a lot of people might go, oh, that's a bunch of spirit science hogwash. Oh my gosh. No. Your consciousness is what is manifesting the life that you're living right now. My old sensei used to tell me, where your head is at is where your life is at. So if you're not living your life in accord with this, and I'm not saying that in a religious sense, that you must follow the law. It's not like that. This is purely for your benefit. If you're not following in accord with this, you're going to start finding way more challenge than you signed up for in your life, because the universe is going to throw everything at you until you get it. And if you don't get it in this life, who knows? Maybe you keep coming back until you get it. But you're going to get it eventually. And when you do, that's when life starts to get easier. All right? Easier in the sense that, not that you're ridding yourself of all challenge or whatever, but easier in the sense that you can go through those challenges with ease. You're not exhausting yourself as much anymore. I get a lot of students that come in and they're very tense and they try so hard with every move because that's what they believe they need to do. And it actually shows, I was like that too when I started. And I remember what state of mind I was in when I first signed up for training. And the state of mind was, I want to perform. I want everybody to look at me like I'm the best. I just want to master this technique so badly that I'm going to force my way through it. When you realize that technique is teaching you not to force. It's teaching you to be like water. It's teaching you to flow. It's teaching you to adapt. And so you have to get your consciousness sharpened first before you'll even be able to master things in the physical world. So There's also, quickly here, I'm kind of going on a long one here, but this is just so important. There's so many different warrior cultures. Actually, every warrior culture in history that I've discovered has had some form of this understanding of these codes. And although there's been many, many breaches of that throughout these various warrior cultures throughout history, that's not to reflect on the philosophy. That's to reflect on maybe the twisted understanding of the philosophy or the manipulation of the philosophy or whatever. So, try to understand this from the original source. Even coming out of the ancient Germanic philosophy, they have what's called the 9 noble virtues of Asatru. And so you've got 9 virtues now. You've got courage, truth, honor, fidelity, discipline, hospitality, industriousness, self-reliance, perseverance. These are very, very key. It's the same kind of refrain. Then you go into the Sikh warrior tradition, which I believe we spoke about in the introduction, talking about the idea that a true warrior is humble and gentle, and no arrogance, bears no malice, even to his enemies. A true warrior is a saint and a warrior integrated into one. A true warrior fights with his mind before fighting with a sword, etc. And there's a deep discussion in there about following the flow of natural law and the Great Spirit and all of that. And it's really, really beautiful. And the more you study this, what you're going to find is, what I could sum this up in a very short sentence, I could sum the whole thing up by a brilliant African proverb that says, if there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do you no harm.
Yes.
So this is the key to all of this. And when there's no enemy within, what are they talking about, that enemy within? Well, look within and see if you're finding any oppositional force. Look into your own mind. Start to monitor your own inner conversation and tell me if there's an enemy in there or not. And an enemy is defined as an the opposer, right? So if there's something that's shutting down your consciousness through fear, if that element is existing in your consciousness, work on that. Because once you work on that and start applying these virtues into your life, what's going to happen is that you're not going to have so much resistance in your life. You're going to eradicate the external enemy by eradicating the internal enemy. And that's the key. That's also discussing the concept of fostering courage. If you can become courageous, then your enemies won't want to mess with you. You know what I mean? So on so many levels, this applies. But I love how when you bring this into the idea of moral philosophy and how important it is, how it benefits your life and the lives of those around you, and how as a species we could totally be evolving in a completely different direction if we had more role models in our society, if we had more people that were exercising these ideas on a bigger level. It would influence the youth of our culture, which would then start to breed that into our later generations, which would bring about great change. So that's my hope. My hope is that these types of moral virtues are no longer just in the world of religion, which in itself is an obscenity, but that they're brought forward in a very real way, and maybe could even be taught in school, and if not, they definitely should be taught by parents, and everybody that's around these children, and it should become integrated completely in our lives so that we can all benefit from it.
I couldn't agree more, David, really. And I so appreciate the way that you're breaking down these codes, because as I sit and listen to you, I can really physically feel how one is sort of interlinked and almost interwoven with the other. You can't really take any aspect of it and not understand or implement the other. So it's to me it seems a very, very complete guideline, principles, as they are, morals and ethics. But
Right.
it's something which we can really integrate into our lives and into our practice, into the ways that we behave and the ways that we think. So I'm really looking forward to see how these alignments take place in the body as well. The mind, as you're saying, the mind, body, spirit, intelligence, and how these ethics and morals are actually woven into that daily practice. So again, setting the stage there for lots more to explore. And I really felt, if we look around today, we can see how without morals we really don't have a leg to stand on. We don't know how to defend ourselves against the kind of manipulation that we see, because I think we've even lost track of understanding what is right and wrong. You know,
Yes.
we're deceiving ourselves. We're telling ourselves we're not sure, we're uncertain, it depends. It's this idea of it's all being relative. When in actual fact, I think deep down, we do still know, as a child knows, as you pointed out so well, the difference between right and wrong, but then how to behave in the face of something which is so immoral. You know, what do we call upon? And this is what you're illustrating so well, these fundamental principles for living life and for defending against this incredible manipulation that we're currently enduring. So,
and remember too, Louise, that's a good point. Remember too that manipulation exists first inside each and every one of our minds. The powers that be that we see in the world, they're, you know, you can say they're psychopaths, sociopaths, whatever. Absolutely. They are people that have cut themselves off from the human family and from their own humanity. That's why they do these cremation of care ceremonies and all this weird stuff. But the idea here is that they're just, the fact that pestilence has risen up in our midst, has more to do with what's lacking in us than it does what's lacking in these few people that have risen to power in our world and various institutions or whatever. If an enlightened, empowered populace, they would never put up with this. They would never, there would be a detoxing that would be taking place constantly. That was supposed to be the idea of what America was founded on, which was that there were these checks and balances in place to ensure that we don't get any tyrants in power, and that it's truly an administrative arm on behalf of the people, just so we can get things done. You know what I mean? If we go too extreme into sort of an anarchy concept in the way that it's mostly understood, I'm not talking about, you know, in its truest self, but just in the way it's understood, is if we go too extreme and we don't have a population of people who understand moral virtue and all of natural law and all these things, then you are going to end up with absolute and total chaos. Okay? So people that are advocating that we switch completely over to some kind of anarchy system where, you know, everybody rules themselves, we're not there yet as a populace as a whole. Maybe eventually we can get to that point, but the idea is that we would need something in the meantime to form some kind of at least organization or administrative arms on behalf of building that. You know, like even a lot of the founders like Thomas Paine and whatever, they're like, yeah, the government is a necessary evil. You know, he talked about it as an evil, but at that time he's like, the people aren't ready at this point, but we need to give some kind of framework so that we can, you know, build something that's going to actually create that true freedom and independence. But what happened? Well, even that got corrupted. Even that got infiltrated and turned on its head. And then now here we have a mockery of that going on in America today. So, really, when we see this, we have to understand that we have to look at this from an individual perspective, because again, you're going to feel pretty disempowered if you're just looking at this as, oh, I have to go out and save the world by myself. Everybody wants to save the world, but a lot of people don't want to save themselves. They want to change the world. They want to change everybody around them. They want to force feed everybody all this stuff. They want to go around and knock on doors like the Jehovah's Witnesses or whatever to try to save everybody. But those people are not working on themselves. They're not working on that part that they can contribute. So, you know, what I think when it comes to this is that we're working towards getting things to a place where we can work more harmoniously just in our own family units, in our communities. If we can start there at the grassroots, it will permeate up to the top. If what we're seeing that has permeated up to the top now is this big corrupt monstrosity of you know, big government and corporatism and you know, all these things that everybody is discussing now, then we know that there's something wrong with the populace. And we know there's been manipulation there too. We know that, you know, the population of America is just oversaturated with toxic food and their toxic ideas. They're downloading information from the television constantly and believing that that's reality, and they're not taking this time to go within and discover who they are, why they're here, and where we're going. You know, so when you have a population that's distracted from what it is to really live as a human being and practice these moral virtues, then you're going to end up with what we've got. So I think that the way to turn this around is to balance out the perspective and to work on your life, because that's what you have control over. And in sort of about an anarchy thing, just a quick comment, if we understood the true definition of that, about how what this is talking about is taking back self-responsibility in your life. It doesn't necessarily apply to a big political model, because we have to get people to a certain level before that can be implemented. But the idea is that this is just talking about, and this is very strong in the warrior tradition as well, taking responsibility for your actions, because that's really the only responsibility you've got. Okay, unless you're raising children, you have responsibility to teach them this truth. But you are responsible for your actions. We got to stop passing the buck all the time, and then from there we're going to start to see some change. So I guess that kind of segues in. Do we have a couple more minutes, Louise, to get into the mind, body, spirit, or did you have any other questions on that?
No, let's finish that section there, because I think the point that you made lots of good points, but that one particularly struck me of how we abdicate responsibility all too easily at the moment. That's one I think I certainly would like to take away with me and ponder, and also that principle that if we don't know who we are, we certainly don't know where we're going and why. So let's get clear about that first, and then yes, let's come back in a little while and take a look at the mind, body, spirit connection. Thanks, David.
Absolutely, my pleasure.